Well, I suppose I can ask the question again is, what do you remember about the 1918 flu epidemic?
Well, I remember quite a bit about it because it happened about the same time that the war started. And I had a brother that was, an older brother that was ready to go into the, or he was already in the service. He'd been in what was at that time a National Guard, you know. And
He was in Company G?
yeah, he had just graduated from college, and he was going into the Army. And it just happened about that time that, now I suppose that must have been in 1918. It was about that time that they started recruiting people. You know, a lot of people were drafted to go in the service. And I remember that when they brought them in and they lined them up and paraded them up and down to the main street and, you know, to give them a send-off.
And you were in Lisbon?
Yes, in Lisbon, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it was into the war. Some of the soldiers that got into the service, they got the flu, and it was particularly bad overseas. And there was one or two of them that were died from the flu before they ever got anywhere. They never got overseas.
They were like in Camp Dodge?
I think they were died in this country. And then later on, I didn't know this at the time, but he would be my future brother-in-law. My sister would marry him. His name was Martin Ostrom, and he was in college at that time. And he and a lot of other kids like they did at that time were super patriotic, and they went out and enrolled in Mass, you know. And he went overseas almost immediately, and he was in the service where they took care of the influenza cases over there overseas, and they had a lot of them. A lot of people died with it overseas. And he said that he told me about it when he got back, that he was in the I don't know what they called it then. Maybe it was a hospital corps or something. Okay. And he was in that, and he went through the service. I don't know. I don't think that he had the flu himself, but he went all through the service and got home okay. Mm-hmm. But that was the people that went overseas. But in Lisbon, there was the flu spread real rapidly, mm-hmm. And I remember I had a sister that was going to SU as a freshman, and it broke out during the fall, as I remember, and they closed the college and sent her home. And I remember when she came home, she was wearing a mask. They were, you know, they didn't know what the flu was all about, and they were trying to prevent it from spreading anymore. But anyway, the flu spread quite rapidly in Lisbon. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like that just about anybody could get it, but one of the things that seemed to be that the healthier people get it, and they were very susceptible to it, mm-hmm. And they got pneumonia, and a lot of them died quite quickly. Mm-hmm. And it was so bad that many cases like that in Lisbon they turned a high school building into a hospital, and they brought people in from the country if they couldn't take care of themselves. But a lot of a lot of the people in the town that were able, like my mother and my older sister, they were called on, they're kind of drafted into taking care of those that were in the country that were sick. And so they did a lot of that work. And and you asked me about how many died. Well, they died rapidly. And I remember when my brother and I, we were just kids. I was about 9 and he was about 12 or so. We went over to my dad's store. My dad had a furniture store and he had undertaking business in it. And the undertaking was in the back part of the building. So we went over there, and when we got there, there was a whole bunch of buggies and wagons and stuff, and they'd had bodies in them. And that came as an awful surprise to all those people, of course, and they didn't know how to take care of them or anything. And so they loaded them up in a grain wagon or in a buggy. And sometimes they just took the spring of the bed, the whole business, and put it in there. So that would have left a very impressive memory for me, you know, to see that many die. Of course, there were a lot of people that I knew that passed away with it. I had it myself. Unlikely, though, as it seems, my dad was right in the midst of all of that and dealing with all of those dead people with flu, but he never got it.
When was your dad born?
My dad was born in '61, so he was about middle-aged about that time. Mm-hmm. And my mother was too, and my mother was kind of a practical nurse. Mm-hmm. And she did a lot of nursing in the country. Mm-hmm. But, you know, there wasn't much that they could do for those people because they didn't know what caused it. And it always seemed to wind up with pneumonia. And I suppose that was probably the final what got them. Mm-hmm. I remember my mother coming home and making what they called pneumonia jackets. It was a kind of like a shirt with a lot of cotton batting lining in it too, so that they would keep warm. I remember there was one family that there were 3 boys, and they were all in the service, and they all died. Three of them were all buried within a matter of weeks, you know. It didn't take people long to succumb to the disease because it was very, very, very tough. Mm-hmm. And there was not much medicine. And the doctors apparently had no idea. But of course, this was long before there was any specific medicines that were designed for certain diseases.
Mm-hmm. Who was your family doctor?
His name was Dr. Bakke, but there was another, there were 2 doctors, A.G. and T.C. Patterson, and Dr. Wands, and they had a kind of a little clinic there because they were going night and day. They had to have drivers to, in the wintertime, and they had the problem too of getting around with the